Here I am with Beth Revis, and we are at the SIA Book Festival, and it is so exciting to get to meet you because I read Across the Universe, and it is absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
And I've heard so many good things about all of your other books as well, and so I'm excited to read this as well. But to start out, would you mind telling me a little bit about yourself and about how you began to write and became an official writer?
Yeah. Oh, official.
Because I presume that, I think writers are kind of born.
Well, I don't know. I still don't know if I'm official yet or not. That feels very presumptuous.
Yeah, well, I'll never be an official adult is something that I've decided on.
No adulthood
Still
at all.
sock slide across my living room, you know.
Well, I mean, that's what socks are for. It's the only reason to wear socks.
I think so.
Absolutely. Well, I always wanted to be a writer. I remember in first grade, my mother has this picture of the story that I wrote and illustrated. It was like, I wrote a book. It was like 3 sentences long. But in first grade, I thought it was a book. And I always wanted it, but I never thought it was a viable career. And so, like, on career day, I dressed up as a secretary because at least secretaries got to type. And I was like, that's like being a writer. And, like, it's not. But I thought it was. So I always wanted it, but I didn't think it was viable. So I wrote in my spare time. And I wrote my first novel when I was a sophomore in college. It was terrible. And I mean, truly, deeply terrible. I sent it out anyway because I didn't realize it was terrible. And it was soundly rejected. So I wrote another one. And it was soundly rejected. And I wrote another one, and it was soundly rejected. And that happened for 10 books over the course of 10 years.
Wow.
I had about 1,000 rejections total. Wow. Across the Universe was, I call it my give-up book, because when I wrote that book, when I finished it, I had this very vivid memory of leaning back in my spinny chair. Because as I said, I'm not an adult, so I have a spinny chair. And I was leaning back in my spinny chair, and I thought, if this doesn't get published, I may as well quit, because I cannot do better than this. Like, this is it. And that was the book that changed everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a story. Man.
Yeah, a decade of suck. But
Did you have how were your like interactions with other people who were involved in writing during that time? Did you have much of a community?
I reached out a lot. I mean, especially as I grew, because when I was in college, I was like, I'm going to be the brilliant author, and like I realized quickly, like I was not a special snowflake. I joined SCBWI, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and that was integral to me to make those first connections with other people who wanted to be writers. And I think I always have, because I was a younger sibling, I always had this, I'm too little to be doing anything, like feeling. So it was nice to be a part of a professional organization that treated me as a professional, even though I didn't feel that way. And that's where I got my first connections. And then just on the internet, I was able to reach out to other people and go to book signings. I met Carrie Ryan, who's a really good friend of mine now. And she's here too. Yes. But I met her by going to a book signing and like fangirling at her, and she recognized that I was also a writer. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's neat. So how did you deal with that much rejection? I mean, you did have a breaking point, but how did you keep going?
I think it helps that I'm very stubborn, and I get that from my grandmother. And I think it also helps that I write fairly quickly. And so by the time I would finish the first novel and start querying it, I was already starting the second one. And so when I started getting those rejections, it felt like, well, they don't like this one, but wait till they see this next one. And I always thought every one of them was the one. And it never occurred to me that it wasn't until I got a bunch of rejections. But I always thought it was the one.
Yeah.
But it was definitely depressing and sad, and I drank a lot. So there's that too. Coffee, I drank coffee.
Yes, right.
Coffee.
So you started with Across the Universe, and that one was the first one that succeeded, and it's a wonderful novel.
Thank
it
you.
is absolutely fantastic, really,
It will always be
really
my
exciting.
baby.
Yeah, and you took that and you extended the world out for several more books. You wrote 2 more in the series, and then you also have another one, which
It's a companion.
Is a companion kind of novel from. So the first one is about they're traveling to another planet to colonize another planet, and oh my, the beginning with the whole freezing thing, the cryo freezing thing, that was terrifying.
Thank you.
The thought of being cryo frozen. Oh, I'm going to sleep for 300 years, and then there's that sort of sense that she's not really asleep, and you're like alive and awake and sentient for 300 years.
That was almost cut. Because my editor was like, this isn't very believable, and I was like,
no, that is like primal fear, the whole fear of being buried alive and all that sort of stuff.
I read about anesthesia where you're really awake for it, but you can't move, and that's so terrifying.
Yeah, that was, as soon as that happened in the book, which was very early on, I was like, this is amazing. And I was hooked, and I couldn't let go, because that was just, Yeah, you stuck right into my primal fears. It was great. It was great. But now you're writing another one, or you were about to publish another one.
Yes, in June.
And it is not of the space age.
It is not.
Okay.
It's a complete departure. It kind of started off as science fiction because it starts off as a boy who believes he can travel through time, and he's accidentally trapped his girlfriend, who is not a white Protestant, in Salem, Massachusetts during the witch trials.
Oh, well.
Slight problem.
Right.
So the book started off as really a time travel story, but then it became a story of, well, what if he cannot really travel through time, and he's actually having mental delusions, and he's in a boarding school for the emotionally disturbed.
Wow.
So that's where the story became. It evolved into that sort of way. So it's technically contemporary. It started sci-fi, but it's really contemporary.
So it's kind of a blend of both.
It's a blend.
Well, how do you go about writing? When you started with this very science fiction kind of novel, but it's got great, great character development and great like teenage relationships, and it's not just for sci-fi people. I think it's good for anybody. Definitely
Thank
read
you.
this book.
Yes, every single person on earth should read this book.
Yes, definitely. But then, so your next one, you sort of stepped into something that wasn't sci-fi. How do you feel about like moving away from something that you already sort of established and did well?
It's a little strange. I was actually talking about this yesterday as well. It's a little strange, but it feels natural because the 10 books that I did not get published, they were all fantasy. And then the one book that got published after that was sci-fi, and everybody knows me as a sci-fi writer. But in my head, I'm not just a sci-fi writer.
Sure.
I have all these other books that aren't sci-fi. I never thought I'd write contemporary, but at least it still has the weirdness that I like. So, I mean, it feels a little strange, but I feel like people see like the tip of the iceberg, and the tip of the iceberg is what's been published, but there's all this other stuff. So it's still me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's neat. Well, here we are at this book festival,
Yes.
and this is a brand new thing from Murphysboro, and this is so exciting, and it's so amazing to get to meet wonderful and amazing authors that
Well, you guys have knocked it out of the park. This is awesome.
Well, it was very much them, not me. I'm just camera guy kind of thing. But it's been such a great experience, and it's really, I think, made a huge difference in our students. I know I had some students who were just dying to meet you and were so excited to see you. And I think that so many of the students I saw walking away, so we had 1,500 students here, and so many of them walking away were so energized by the idea of being part of a reading community, part of a writing community.
I was sitting next to Rita Petty's in the signing line, and I saw this teenage boy, and he was adorable. And if you were the teenage boy, you were adorable. He had her book, her first book, in his hand, and he clutched it like this. And he walked past me, and he just looked at the book, and he was like, "This is the best thing ever." And then he hugged it, and he walked away hugging the book. I was like, that is so awesome.
Oh, it's perfect.
It was such a beautiful moment.
Yes, absolutely. This festival feels like it's really making a difference in our community.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
How long have you been involved in sort of book festivals and things like that? What has been your experience as far as how they influence their area and how they, what sort of impact they have?
What I think is amazing and wonderful is when a book festival becomes a part of the community. And this is what I hope will happen for Murphysboro. And I see this in like Decatur, Georgia, with the Decatur Book Festival. And when you go to that book festival, it's an entire community function. And the community is now, like in the book world, if you say Decatur, every author is going to think of the Decatur Book Festival. Right. But in the community, if you say Decatur, they think of books. So it's a community that has embraced authors and books, and every single member of that community is aware of the festival, is aware of books, and it becomes something that's a part of the culture. It becomes a reading culture and a reading town, and that's just it's a beautiful thing to happen.
Absolutely, and think of the difference that can make in these students.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Their education and their lives, and in the richness that comes from all this reading.
Yeah, and they're just more aware. When I used to be a teacher as well, and I will never forget my first year of teaching. One of my kids said, I was passing out books, and I was like, "You take the book home," and he was like, "Well, what do I do with it?" I'm like, "You take it home and you read it." And he was like, "But where do I put it when I'm done?" I'm like, "Anywhere you want." And he was like, "But we don't have any books at home." And they did not have a single novel at home.
Wow.
And that has always struck me. And that is, if there's a book festival in the community, I can only hope that means there's books in the homes.
Right, absolutely. Well, I think we're out of time, but it's been so wonderful to talk with you, and so wonderful to have you here and to get to meet you.
Thank you.
And I need you to get me to sign my book.
Oh,
so thank you so much.
Thank you.